I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Pakistan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pakistan aligns itself with the statement delivered by the representative of Italy on behalf of the Uniting for Consensus group. We take this opportunity to welcome the appointment of the co-chairs, the permanent representatives of Kuwait and the Netherlands, for the intergovernmental negotiations on the Security Council reform process. We trust that they would perform their functions in an impartial, transparent, and inclusive manner. President, at this moment in history, multilateralism is under strain as global challenges multiply. The inability of the Security Council to take meaningful action in response to many conflicts feeds into the debate about Security Council reform being indispensable for more effective maintenance of international peace and security. The reform of the Security Council involves vital interests of all UN member states and must therefore be decided by the widest possible support of the UN membership, that is, by consensus. And that is why the importance of reaching general agreement has been emphasized in resolutions 4826 of 1993 and 5330 of 1998. And this is precisely why decision 62557 stipulated that the intergovernmental negotiations were meant to seek a solution that can garner the widest possible political acceptance by member states. Mr. President, the inability to reach agreement on the reform does not stem from flaws in the reform process itself, but rather from the position of a few member states unwilling to accommodate the broader interests and perspectives of the wider UN membership. So instead of a reform for all, they are seeking privilege for some. Now that is the biggest roadblock to reform. Today, nothing is more anachronistic than the individual permanent membership, a category of members who unashamedly pursue their own national interest, represent nobody, and are accountable to no one. We cannot close our eyes to the historical reality that permanent membership and the veto have often been the root cause of the Council's paralysis and its non-transparent working methods. The overwhelming majority of UN membership believes that this is the fundamental problem facing the Security Council, and it would be disingenuous to suggest that instead of addressing this problem, we aggravate it by adding new individual permanent members. In fact, concepts of permanency, privilege, and special status should have no place in today's United Nations. The reform of the Council should therefore enhance the voice of all UN member states. Our ultimate agreed aim is to make the Council more representative, democratic, transparent, effective, and accountable, enabling it to uphold international peace and security. Only an acceptable formula with an increase in the non-permanent members and a fair rotation through regular elections can provide more equitable representation for all states on the Council. This is also the essence of democracy. Mr. President, regrettably, efforts towards consensus have been obstructed by demands from certain countries seeking permanent membership in an expanded council. Such aspirations contradict the fundamental principle of sovereign equality. These few states try to justify their demands by invoking the logic of contemporary world realities. We need to understand the transient nature of geopolitics and the fact that world order is not static. It has become more pluralistic. Neither is influence perpetual, nor is it confined to a few states. Already, the realities have transformed substantially over the last decades. And were the Council to be truly reconstituted today, at least a couple of its existing permanent members might not retain their privileged status. Likewise, those now claiming eligibility for permanent membership may find themselves surpassed in influence, economy, or capability by others. Colleagues, it is simple logic. The problem should never be mistaken for the solution. Moreover, there are those permanent members who seem open to expanding their exclusive club primarily in an effort to try to preserve their own outdated position of privilege and to scuttle the essence of reform. Such an approach by some permanent members risks turning council reform into an exercise in bloc formation that eventually blocks reform. And if they are truly progressive, they must instead declare a commitment to genuine reform, abandon their own privilege, and be part of the democratic mainstream. President, the intergovernmental negotiations process established through Decision 62-557 is a member state-driven mechanism that has served this Assembly well. Through patient engagement, we have progressively expanded areas of convergence and narrowed those of divergence. We firmly believe that for the benefit of the entire UN membership, member states must be allowed the necessary time and space to reconcile and broaden the areas of convergence and reduce divergences under the 5 clusters, which are, as we know, inherently interlinked. Prematurely launching the so-called text-based negotiations before broad agreement is achieved on the 5 clusters would risk deepening divisions, undoing progress made, and ultimately destabilizing the IGN process. As a non-permanent member, Pakistan is particularly mindful of the imperative of further improving the working methods of the Security Council. That would, among other things, also strengthen the role of the elected members in the working and decision-making of the Security Council. President, the Uniting for Consensus proposal represents an objective, balanced, flexible, and inclusive approach that is designed to accommodate the legitimate interests of all member states and regions. We remain convinced that it offers the most viable foundation for building consensus on this long-standing issue. The group maintains that expansion should occur only in the elected non-permanent category. And each region could, however, be assigned longer-term seats, including possibility of re-election. The historic injustice against Africa must be redressed, as provided for in the Pact for the Future. Similarly, adequate representation of the underrepresented and unrepresented regions and groups such as Asia Pacific, Latin America, and the Caribbean, as well as cross-regional groups such as the SIDS, the Arab Group, and the Organization of the Islamic Cooperation, OIC, has to be catered for as also agreed in the Pact for the Future. and the unequal advantage enjoyed by Europe in the current composition of the Council merits correction. We understand the common African position. The African model of regional representation, reflecting unity and regional consensus, is altogether different from the pursuit of power and privilege by some individual countries in other regions. We therefore see the African position in a positive light, and Africa would indeed benefit if it pursues its demand as a special case, detached from other positions of groups that are inherently divisive. The UFC proposal has inbuilt flexibility to adequately accommodate African aspirations. President, in conclusion, we reaffirm our commitment to engaging constructively in the IGN process. We will continue to work closely with the co-chairs to promote convergence and reduce divergence in pursuit of a fair, effective, and representative reform of the Security Council. A reform for all, privilege for none. I thank you.